Have you ever wondered how the big artists do the sound design in drum and bass? Well, it's probably not as complicated as you think. Welcome back to Inverse Audio. As always, my name's 5X, and today we're going to be breaking down the most popular sounds used in drum and bass using SERUM. All of the presets from today's video will be available for all of you to download for free, to use as templates or when you're just feeling lost with sound design. The link for that will be down below. If you've enjoyed the video, then please consider leaving it a like, subscribe to the channel if you want more content, and leave a comment with what you want to see next. And without any further ado, let's get right in the video. Alright, so firstly, I just want to begin by saying this is not going to be a complete crash course in SERUM. So if you've never used it before, maybe this isn't a tutorial for you. Not to say that the things that we're going to go over today are super complicated either. It's going to be a demonstration of all the sounds that are used, most of the sounds, the ones that I could think of within drum and bass today. So starting off with the basic sub. I'm going to initialize the template and remake it. So for this one, it's really easy. It sort of depends how fat the sub you want to be, but I always begin with picking up a basic shapes and then going into this edit window right here. And what you're looking to do is just add in a few more harmonics. So we're going to add bin 3 and bin 5 until we get like a little slope shape like this. And then of course, dragging it down 2 octaves. And then maybe a bit of attack and release just to get rid of that initial click. That thing doesn't have to be much, just so the click's not audible. Set it to mono so you can't play more than 2 notes. And to be honest, for a basic sub, it's all you need. If you want more harmonics, I'd advise adding like a filter and then just turning a drive up. But this is one of the most simple sounds you can make. Now, if you want to go for something like the noisy sub, then what you can do is just raise the noise up and drag LFO 1, set it to trigger, maybe set it to 1/8, and then you're just going to be doing the same with the distortion. You want more of the noise, just add more of it. You can, of course, change the noises as well. They're all going to sound slightly different. But moving on from the subs, the very basic sounds. So next we've got Reese's. I'm going to show you 2 Reese's, a hard one, and then maybe like an intro Reese if you want something a bit more gentle. So this is what the hard one would sound like. Pretty cool. Now, once again, you'll see a trend here that these are really simple, and the purpose of me giving you these templates so then you can go away and change them. So we're going to start off with 2 of the default waves minus 2 octaves. Then you're going to displace them. So the further you displace them from each other, the more of a wobble they'll have. So I'm going to go for 20 and minus 20 on the fine. Then to get it to slide, you want to head down to the bottom here, right, and mono and legato, and turn up that portamento time. And then you can always change the curve if you want it to slide a bit faster in between those notes. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add on a notch filter, set it to A and B. Is how you get that cool almost phasing effect. So we're going to set LFO 1 to do this, maybe of a bit of a slower rate. Add on a bit of attack and release here. And then what we're going to do is distort it. And then the sound comes from the sort of multi-band compressor. If you just turn it to multi-band, turn down the threshold. And then it adds a bit too much high end in my opinion, so I always like to turn it down with an EQ. You can always add in a bit of noise for some grit. And the cool thing is here that you can pretty much change the wavetables if you want to something. Ideally, you probably want them to match. But there you go. I would probably recommend, you know, taking out the fundamental here by going into the edit window and removing the first harmonic and getting a sub that goes directly out just so it's not phasing. It helps with the mono compatibility. But yeah, really mess about with it. Maybe, you know, it can add on some FM, I don't know. Next, we're going to go for a bit more of a gentle Reese, something that you'd probably use in an intro. So this is once again using that same principle of having two sawtooth waves, slightly displaced. But then you probably want to add a bit more unison to this one. And then the filter probably at low cut. And once again, we'll make it slide. A bit more attack and release. Something you can do is lower the decay and the sustain and almost get it to almost like do like a cutoff here, automating the cutoff, sorry. Go for a bit of distortion. Probably don't want to go too crazy though. One cool thing you can do is add the chorus, but be careful of your mono compatibility. So for there, I'll just turn down the rate, turn delay 1 and 2 off, feedback off, low pass all the way up. You're just playing with the depth. The higher you have the depth, the more wide it's going to be. If you do that, I would once again advise to add that bottom harmonic using the sub, if you want the bottom harmonic at all. But yeah, once again, a really simple sound. All right, so next we're moving on to the fun stuff. So we've got a jump up womp. So for this one, you're going to want to load up 2 sine waves. So let's go to basic shapes. The whole trick with this one is you want to have the waves displaced. So right now I've got them at -2 and then this one at +7 octaves. And the whole sound is essentially going to come from FM and distortion and using a filter as well. So we're going to make the LFO shape. So if you hold Alt, you can actually snap to the grid. I like to put it on the second one. You curve this one down and this one up, so it makes like a sharp slope almost. Set it to envelope, and a 1/4 is fine. And then you're going to want to drag this to your cutoff, Alt and Shift if you want to make it unipolar. And then don't forget to add B on there as well. We're also going to add this to the level. So level of A and B. Next, we're going to add in some FM. And then lastly, just slam it with distortion, multi-band compression, and then lower the highs again on that EQ. I was going for a bit of hyper, although I do prefer a bit of chorus myself. Or maybe even both. You can always add in a bit of noise with that as well. And now you can play about with the octaves here. And, you know, once you get the basic shape right, then you can just literally chuck on any random wavetable and just have some fun with it, experiment. At the end of the day, that is how you're going to get those crazy sounds. Just going to be sitting in SERUM and not necessarily for long, but just doing things that you might not do otherwise. You can always play about with these bends as well. Next thing I'm going to show you is a bandpass womp. So it's very similar, except we're going to be using a bandpass rather than a normal low pass. So to do this, let's load up a sawtooth. And then we're going to load up a sine wave as well. We're going to go -2, and we're going to leave this one as is. Next, for the filter, you of course want your band filter, so probably put band 24. And most of your movement is going to come from this cutoff here. So then we're going to take LFO 1, going to make that same sort of shape again. And then, yeah, you're going to want to dial this in until you get the perfect sort of tonality. That's pretty good. And then, yeah, just distortion. Maybe lower the octave. And we're going to lower the level of the first one here. And then just use FM. Takes a bit of, fiddling about with a band pass until you get it perfect. Always add in a bit of noise, but just be careful with it. And then maybe a bit of chorus. And then that is sort of how you get that. Maybe hear it a bit more in dance floor. But yeah, next sound we're going to be breaking down is an FM sort of wobble. You hear SERUM using this quite a bit. He really likes to use FM. Maybe not the best rendition of that sort of sound, but you can make some really cool sounds out of this technique. So we're going to be loading up 2 sine waves, -2 and +1. And then we're going to be adding a filter. This is optional. You don't always have to add it. It's going to be on re-trigger this time. And we're going to get it going one way. And what you really want to do is automate the FM. Right, so this is sounding similar to Chop House by SERUM. And then you can mess about with your effects. Change the relationship between the 2 oscillators. But yeah, the main trick with this one is the FM. You can always play about with a pitch bend. This is one thing that you should be using a lot of the time. Right, maybe change the rate. And automate that in your track because you can get some really, really cool sounds out of it. Next thing we've got is a wobble bass that was sort of really popular towards the start of the year. I don't really hear it as much now, but this one is so incredibly easy. You want to go to digital and look for the FFT add seconds wavetable, and then drag LFO 1, set it to like an 1/8 on re-trigger, and then lower it. And that's essentially the basics of the sound. You can always play about with the filter as well. And then, a bit of distortion and do some post-processing to get it sound a bit better. But once again, play about with this pitch bend here. Adjust the amount of semitones, you're pitching it down by. So make sure to play about with that. But once again, a really easy sound. And it's, you're starting with these easy bits and then make it a bit more complicated just by adding a few extra parameters. The next sound that we're going to be going for is a foghorn. So foghorns, I think it's easiest to start off with a sine wave just to get the shape of the sound right. So the main things in this is going to be a long LFO and filter that opens up with the LFO, as well as some FM and then heavy distortion at the end. Let's get the filter first. So LFO 1, we're going to set it to envelope, and I usually like to do 2-bar triplet. It gives me enough time to sort of play it out. You can, of course, extend this if you want. I'm just going to curve it up a little bit, and then we're going to open up that filter from the bottom here. And then we're going to adjust the octaves to -2 on this one. And then with the second one, it really depends what you want to do. If you're going for a really distorted sound, I find that 7 + 7 works better. But +4 is also pretty good. Just play about with these. Not all of them are going to sound great. And then we're going to add on some FM. So we're going to take LFO 1 again. Of this sound really comes in when you distort it. So once again, you can play about, maybe, add some add the automation to the drive. And then last, multi-band compression. Maybe lower the highs again and add a reverb. Turn your low cut up. If you want to slide between notes, make sure to set it to mono legato and turn up that portamento time. But probably the most effective technique with those foghorns is using the pitch bend. And then you can always, change the wavetables, see what you can find. Pretty cool. And if you want to make the actual Foghorn wobble, you can just maybe add a second LFO into the levels of oscillator A and B, and then set this to re-trigger. Maybe an A. And there we go, already getting a cool sound here. So next, I sort of started touching on that sound a bit before. It's this dance floor LFO that you hear. Kanon used to use it a lot back in the day. People like Suki, Herbs as well. So yeah, once again, it's a really easy sound. It's almost just like a repeated womp. So 2 sawtooths, one at -2, the other one at +7 semitones. Then we're going to grab a filter, turn it on for A and B. Then we're going to grab this LFO and we're going to shape it just like a womp, except the only difference is we're going to set it to re-trigger. Sometimes you can go for the triplet as well, 1/4 triplet if you enable that. And then we're going to turn on some FM. And then don't forget to add that LFO onto the cutoff. And then add on that mono legato so you can slide it. Slam it with some distortion. Multi-band compression. Bit of EQ, maybe lower those highs. Add on like a reverb or something. And I think the most important thing with this one is to play about with wavetables. Just click random until you find something that, you know, works. And if you want a really big sound, like especially like this, it's using multiple layers of this sort of sound. But yeah, once again, pretty simple. Next, we're going to go for a dance floor mid bass. Right, classic sound you'd hear in any of the worship tracks called Shock, Sub Focus, 1991, Wilkinson Dimension, you know, all those sorts of dance floor people. And it's a really easy sound to make initially, but it's how you layer it is what's going to give you a fat mid bass. So it's mostly just in the envelope. You want to set a decay time. I usually find around 300 to work pretty well. And then just set the cutoff on the envelope. Then we want to distort it a bit. And then add on that chorus. So lower the rate, delay 1 and 2 off. Play about with the depth, feedback off, and low pass all the way up. If you want to go for one sound rather than using layers, you can, so make sure to enable this for B as well. I find that ICANN has kick is a really good wavetable to use for this. I usually like to do -1 octaves, so it's 1 higher than the original. You're going to lower your detunes so they're not as detuned. And then maybe even a bit of FM. If you want a bit more movement in your mid basses, what I would advise you to do is map it to make it velocity sensitive. So to do that, we're going to drag the velocity onto the decay. It's going to take a bit of tweaking. So that way, when you're playing a high velocity sound is going to open up, and you can play about with your MIDI then. Another thing, if you want to apply that to your filter, you want to go to your matrix and find where envelope 1 is controlling your filter cutoff, and then you can drag velocity to the auxiliary source. So then when I go into piano roll and I play some notes, and then for example, if I make this one lower, right, you're going to hear the second note almost like chugging behind. So you can get some cool patterns out of it to make it a bit less stale. All right, next we're going to move on to some jump up sounds. So first, we've got a laser. So this one is going to vary a lot. You're never going to... This one is like experimentation is key, but it starts off so simple. So starts off with a sine wave once again. And then we're going to take LFO 1, and this one we're going to use as a shape for the sound. So it's going to be like the envelope almost. So you can set it to re-trigger at 1/4 or 1/8, somewhere in between, and you just set it to the level. Next thing you want to do, grab LFO2, set it to re-trigger, and then you're going to drag that to the chorus pitch. Probably make it go one way, and then depending on how much you almost open this up, the higher pitch it's going to go to. But the trick is to have the rate really high. And then to get it almost that like metallic sound, you want to use a Comb Plus filter. And you want to turn up that resonance. It's going to take you a bit of tweaking to find the sweet spot for the resonance. You can always change the octave as well. And the higher your resonance is, the more of a delay it's going to have almost. Oops, my bad. So yeah, then you can play about with speed once again. And then you can once again, distort it a little bit. And probably want to take out those lows. Going back to the laser I made for this video, it's the same. I just added in a bit of chorus. Yeah, as you can see, it's just a lot playing about with the filter. And if you want to make it sound really interesting and almost just like change up the sound completely, this is an FL stock plugin, so I've just mapped it to a bus here. And you're going to want to find effector. You want to turn off the bypass and then use either the filter, the flanger, the delay. Play about with these. Because it's really going to shape the sound really differently. But yeah, lasers are not that complicated. It's just a lot of playing about, and then it's probably mostly in your post-processing. You can also play about with a lot of these filters in the flanges section to get some interesting tonalities. Maybe even try switching up the wave. Who knows? So the next sound that we're going to go for is a grot or a frog. It's got a few different names, but very heavily used in Belgium. Jump up, obviously, same as the laser. But yeah, pretty cool sound. With this one, you're going to take a wave shape that's got some interesting harmonics. So in this case, I'm using ICANN has kick. And we're going to do almost the same thing as we did for the laser, where we shape the envelope 1 as like LFO 1 as envelope almost. And we just set it to the level, sorry. Next, you're going to want to lower the octave. So now it sounds really low, right? But when we put on a filter, for example, so I'm going to use the high pass 12, and then when you turn up the resonance and play with the frequency, you're going to get some interesting sounds out of it. You can also use LFO2 to maybe automate the wavetable position. It's all about just playing with these filters, but one thing you want to do is remove that low end, and then when you play with the octaves, the slower you go, the less cycles it's going to do, right? When you start going, it ruins the sound. So you want to have it really low. For effects, you probably want a bit of distortion. And then some compression, and then you want to EQ those lows. You can do the same trick again with the lasers, where you add on an effector. So we just turn the bypass off. There we go, it's pretty good. Maybe a bit of decapitator just to control the volume and give it some distortion. And then a pro tip, once you've done that and you want to build yourself a library of these grots really quickly, get yourself an Edison and then come to the SERUM patch. What we're going to do is we're going to press record on the Edison and then change a few parameters to get a few different sounds, so then we can resample it and use it in our tracks. I'm going to press record and then play about with it. maybe change the wavetable. And then once you've done that, you can literally just drag these into your project, maybe save them. So you've got like a whole bank of these. That wasn't the best example of what you can do with these, but you can get some interesting sounds, right? But it's really simple. It's just about finding like a cool wavetable and then shaping your filters to control those frequencies. And then the last sound that we're going to cover, and you hear and jump up a lot, although I feel like it's dying out a little bit, is that YAE Bass. This one is really simple again. So you want to get yourself a square wave specifically. Get LFO on retrigger and then map it to the cutoff. Change it to a low octave. And then the distortion that you're looking for is actually downsample. And you want to set it to around, 40 to 50, 60-ish%. And that's pretty much the basis of the sound. If you want to add another layer, of filters, you can add the formant filters. And yeah, just play about with it, but it is just mostly a square wave. Nothing too crazy once again. Right, so now that we've covered all the sounds, I just want to give you a few quick tips on what you can do with sound design. So with these templates, I advise for you to experiment a lot with them. You can also, if you go into, this is an FL specifically, so if you're not using FL, I'm not sure if there is a way to do it, it's just not the same. So you can actually save the preset here. And as you can see, I've got a few already. So if I just save it as, hard Reese presets, right? And then when I go up here, right click on this, I can see it right here. And this is basically going to save it as a preset in my FL Studio for SERUM. So it's not actually a SERUM preset. And then I can change this, maybe add some, and then save this as a new preset that you guys will just have for yourself. Another tip, if you're struggling with sound design, we just get a drum loop here. A basic one will do. If you're ever struggling with what sort of sound to put or what to design around it, what I would highly recommend is actually putting down a MIDI pattern with a drum loop and then adding in some notes. I know that sounds terrible, but you get the point. You want to add in some notes, and then from there, you're not just pressing your keys at random. You can actually change the sound. And then it just makes the whole process a bit easier. But that is everything for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you want the presets, the templates from today's video, they'll be on our website for you to download for free. If you're interested in sample packs or anything else like that, mixing and mastering, one-to-one tuition, all on the website. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed today's tutorial and have a good one. Peace.